Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. It is another episode of League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you fine folks for a full playoff preview. Bonanza. That's right, we're dropping the B word on today's episode because we got marquee matchups. It's either finals weekend when you're talking about the LEC, kicking things off for the MSI Qualifier in the LCK, getting deeper in the LCS, and high stakes matches in the LPL. This is the peak in terms of important matches, probably of the entire split.
This has got to be one of those weekends that is double circled in red. This is a major swing point within the already importance that is amplified during these playoff MSI qualification type of situations. And it is all across the major regions that you're going to get this action this weekend. So let's set the table for everybody and get the previews underway.
And we start with that finals weekend, the highest of high stakes, with the trio that I think pretty much everybody would have predicted in the preseason to match up with KC, MCoy, and G2 already waiting in finals. KC and MCoy going to decide the final representative of the midseason invitational and have, well, not quietly, have quite loudly become the best rivalry, not just in the LEC, but I'm going to say in the entire West at the bare minimum. And a lot of that is because of the loud fans and maybe guys shushing crowds, getting fined for some swearing, which, by the way, JoJo should not have been fined for that.
It's crazy that he was fined for that. We're going to hit on that note real quick. The LEC, you cannot have it both ways, where you're tweeting out that clip as promotion and getting all the, clicks and attitude and emotions about that, and then behind the scenes going, yep, we're fining you for saying that, and that's a bad word, we can't have that. I don't like that one little bit from the LEC, but what I do like is the matches on paper and what you're going to have this weekend, because as you laid out, it is the three teams that you would have expected or hoped to have seen, really, I think, out of the majority of people heading through these playoffs. And now we're going to get it with a little bit of extra attitude and motivation on the side of it, of course, with that rivalry to kick things off with, as you mentioned, G2 awaiting the eventual winner. And for both of these squads that are going to get their chance here, Movistar Core and KC, they're absolutely a path for both of them to look better in this series against one another and to use that as the stepping stone to have that better opportunity, better chance at taking down the King in G2.
Now, I'll go one step further, and I think whoever wins this series is beating G2 in those finals. G2's job done. They've already clinched a spot, and we saw how closely matched they were against MCoy. And we saw how evenly matched this KC MCoy match was in that road show. Obviously, we had, the Kalist Penta, the Insane Shyvana out of Mirwin, the Zeri top in Game 3, which is going to be obviously the main thing for me to look at in this series is what champion is Kana and Mirwin playing, because they have both, Kana had these mages, brand top that he's running, Mirwin's crazy. Both top laners are going to be pulling out some wacky stuff.
I think it's more so a factor of when you're looking through the matchups and what you can read for them, you can almost take them as guarantees. You're going to see Kalist pop off and make a big type of statement play. You're going to have Jojo Pyun swing momentum and make some plays and outplays for the Movistar Koi. But that X factor, that question mark, is going to be what type of performance are you getting from your top laner? And that, I think, is going to swing the initial power within this series until you get through and kind of go through what is the meta being established within the series and all those type of emotions and everything else that can add in to it. I'm looking at that top lane matchup and what you're going to get, who's going to excel, what champion picks are going to come through for Mirwin, what is any type of counter options, are you sticking as standard as meta as possible for Kano? All those type of questions, I think, are going to be major factors into how things truly play out in this series.
And obviously maybe the biggest, I think there's two matchups that can go heavily one-sided depending on the day. I think Yahoo has been better than I think people were anticipating, but JoJo has been at legit MVP level, and if he keeps playing like that, that's the big ad going over to MCoy. And we've seen Supa completely flip opposite ends of the spectrum in any given series, game to game, and Kalist kind of had his number in the last matchup, despite it again being a close series. So Bot and mid are the two matchups that can really sway heavily to one side throughout a best of.
Right, and especially because that when you're looking at that difference, it's not just only the difference in that those, again, that head-to-head type of matchup, but it's as well recognizing, okay, well, you're talking about Jojo Pian, you're talking about Khalees in these situations on the other side, and these guys have proven that in elevated circumstances, in this rivalry, they are difference makers. They are built for these type of moments. So for me, I take it as almost that guarantee that those are going to be factors. Those will be power points within this series. And that was why, again, it was so important to look at that top lane matchup and focusing on what you're going to get from Kana, what are the champions from Mirror, those type of things, because that's where I think that variance and unpredictability of this series is going to come through, because I think, again, as you look at those advantages in mid lane, you look at what you can more or less consistently expect from the bot lane of KC. I think that are guaranteed difference makers that you should be factoring into the equation of this series.
And obviously both have elite jungle support duos in Alvaro, Elyoya, Yike, and Busio already have great synergy, but I think the chip on MKOI's shoulder, having already lost to KC, lost to G2 in that upper bracket, they're going to have an extra level of motivation. KC has kind of had an easier time leveling up through the lower bracket against Navi and Giant X. So I think there's some magic mojo going around MKOI. Supa locks in on the day, and they're representing an MSI for the second straight year.
All I want is silver scrapes. That's my only request in this one. I got no prediction one way or the other. I think it'll be a very thrilling final regardless of who gets through and gets to challenge G2 and has their motivation and everything else and whatnot. But I think, again, as long as we get those silver scrapes and we see a real good battle between Movistar Koi and KC, I think we're in good shape for the LEC.
Either of them beating G2 in finals? Is it just G2's world? We're still living in it?
As I said, if you look at the matchup and kind of how things go, and if we do get that silver scrapes, real brawl between both of these squads, and you get a little bit of that level up coming out of it, I can see a path for either one of these squads to be able to take it to G2 and find a way through in that final series. I'm not going to underestimate the Kings just because they have already locked up the prize and going to MSI and sitting pretty here waiting for who's going to challenge them. I think they still are looking to put a little bit of extra push down and pain on the rest of the region and saying, I know you've been rising up. I know things are looking sharp for the challengers. It's still the reign of the king up top.
It feels like it's been weeks and weeks of waiting to just have this top four type of matchup over in the LCS, and we're finally here. Cloud9 versus Lion, FlyQuest versus TL, and both of these matchups haven't happened since week one. And these squads you're feeling completely differently about them from week one, especially when you're looking at FlyQuest, and that's where we'll start because this is obviously the higher stakes do or die elimination matchup between Team Liquid. The first few weeks, it was Jose Dioto's show. We're talking about him as MVP. FlyQuest are still kind of leveling up, but now here we are. Griffin's playing Nasus, Shyvana, Shen in the jungle, and especially in these playoffs, we've seen the Chosen One return as Masu has been elite through the first couple of series for FlyQuest, and they are continually playing through and emphasizing that bot lane.
It's been weeks, waiting for these matchups to build up, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's been weeks. It's been since week 2. I've been waiting because these matchups happened in week 1 in the LCS. We have been waiting, but we will be rewarded this weekend with these matchups. And as you laid out, even more so due to the developments we have seen from all of these squads, but none more so than a squad like FlyQuest, and especially with what is the veteran part of this lineup coming on through and really coming online in Masu, delivering some of the key performances and key, things that you could look for from someone with that experience for this team. And it's, again, not just that, although that is a major factor and a positive one for the team, but you have seen so much in this area that, again, Very excited to see what type of opportunity it will be for them against Team Liquid, and you can bet it'll be very different this time around compared to all the way back in week 1.
Yeah, and we've seen laning dominance out of Masu and Cryogen, and then of course the team fight takeovers, the confidence. We know the aggressive playstyle Masu has developed in his young career, and I we kind of talked about Masu being more of a vocal guy in the communications, and that has made it a little more quiet, but in a good way, on those fly comms. But even though all the hype has been there, the development from them, it still feels like the pressure is on Team Liquid in this series because of the offseason that they had.
Yeah, it very much so is. And I think kind of the one comment on it I will be with Masu kind of stepping up in those communications. It's less about it being quieter, it's just more so that there's more of an established order in that communication when he is chipping in and communicating and being that voice and presence within the team. Kind of leads to less that chaotic chatter, I guess, that you would maybe classify it as before from the rest of the FlyQuest squad. But it should be Team Liquid that is feeling that pressure and should feel the onus of being the team that is expected to win and is expected to set the tone and pace within this series, given, as you laid out, the expected power of this lineup and where you would expect them to be after the offseason. Yet they haven't exactly been there yet to the full degree that I think everybody was sold on when you looked at what was going to happen on paper for this team and, Quid joining and how things should be shaping up. It hasn't shaped up for this Team Liquid squad.
Yeah, and honestly, the only way I see TL actually winning this series is if we get that MVP level Quid. And he had a great series back in week 1 against FlyQuest. But again, in the offseason, Quid was up here, and Quad, people were even hesitant about re-signing with FlyQuest. And as the season has played out, they have absolutely shifted to where I'm putting Quad a little bit ahead of Quid in terms of individual performance right now.
Right, and I think that has to be one of those ones where what is the secret equation in that, right? Is it how much has Quad been leveling up and proceeding to be a more important figure within the FlyQuest team and things are going right? And how much of that is things not exactly going right, not exactly popping off, not being at that MVP type of level that you do associate and expected at a Quid joining already a talented and stacked team like Team Liquid, and we just haven't seen it. So that is absolutely still one of those things that you are heading into this series. No matter the upgrade and confidence in FlyQuest, it still is that expectation for Team Liquid that is the overall riding type of theme of this series and is going to be put to the test by this young upstart FlyQuest squad.
The upper side of things, you've got the undefeated still. People seem to forget Cloud9. And despite being 8-0, I think most people, and I subscribe to Lion maybe being slight favorites, and I say slight, maybe 55-45 at most. And, I think a lot of that is still the Dokla Castle. Dokla played all the last games, but Thanatos has obviously been an absolute demon in the laning phase of the top side. But yeah, 8-0 Cloud9, I don't want to say underdogs, but, the edge is over to Lion for me.
Is this the inspired factor? I think it's because there's no, that is one of the big factors that just it comes into mind when you're thinking about how this could be disrupted for Cloud9 is having an X factor, having a true decision and game breaking factor of a player like Inspired can be, and
especially
how that can
in playoffs. We know he takes it to another level.
Exactly, and so that is something that you do need to be wary of if you are Cloud9. But as you laid out, undefeated and all the things that have gone right for them, you shouldn't be feeling all that concerned, all that worried, but very much so in a matchup against Leon, against Inspired, and how things can go in this best of series. Yeah, I'd be pretty locked in and focused on this one if you are Cloud9.
And listen, we've seen this book before. There's a lot of chapters. A dominant Cloud9 squad throughout all the regular season rolls into that big series, and they fall up short and don't represent at an international event. And I think one of the other reasons I'm feeling a little sketchy about this one for C9 is that mid lane matchup. And Saint, he had a rough start early on to the year and then has proceeded to completely bounce back and be one of the better laning mid laners and just better guys overall. And again, when you're looking at champion pool, as we always have to talk about with APA, I'm looking at, a trio of meta champions. When you're talking about something like Silas, Yone, Aurora, all picks that we've seen Saint excel and dominate on, and all picks that I'm not even sure APA can play at a professional level.
It's going to be a difficult task, I think, individually when you are looking at APA, and especially when you are considering part of that factoring in with Saint is not just the meta champions that are going to be there for him. It's that inspired factor that we were talking about earlier, because you better believe he's gonna be in that mid lane. He is gonna set up a tent and he will be there making sure that there is some advantages, there is action in that mid lane where it is not the stable expected performance type of situation that can come through. That is going to be one of those areas that you have to look at. And it is one of those ones that, again, if you are looking for a reason for the upset, I think you can make that case for it on the Leon side, given that we have seen, I would say, a stable level of performance from APA, right undefeated. How much can you truly criticize and look at those, look for those problems? But at the end of the day, it still is one of those ones where you then check it against the history of the player and the problems, and you're going, well, not really seeing this addressed, not exactly seeing this addressed. So those still are issues that you can exploit and are there. And if you are Leon Gaming, I think you're well equipped to start putting that pressure on this undefeated Cloud9 squad.
And Mr. All Chat himself, inspired as a guy who can, spam his own pings in another way. But I think the thing with APA, he talks his talk, but sometimes he's the most tiltable guy on the Rift. And we have seen it many times if Inspired does set up a tent and put him behind.
It's to the level of where I think you simply just can't tell him to mute it and not do it or whatever. It is so ingrained into his character, to his personality and how he plays. And part of it to the benefit of the motivational side and focus and locked in and whatever when it's going right and everything else. When it's not going right, when it isn't all good and sunshine and roses, and it's the other guy, when it is someone else with that type of edge, like Inspired getting into All Chat and getting into your ego and needling you, that is, again, yes, sometime that we have seen it be a factor negatively and come back to bite you if you are APA. Again, you hesitate to say just make it a non-factor in this series, mute it, avoid it, whatever, because I still think if you can get it going right, that is something that can be that positive factor for a guy like APA.
Prove us wrong, APA. Let's see it. Show up on the day against Sate and Lion Gaming. Mega marquee matchup in the LPL this weekend, and it's not a surprise at all to see JDG and BLG throwing it down for the second straight playoff push. It is a surprise to be seeing this happen in round 2 of the playoffs, and let me tell you, this is the sweetest angle for JDG to get revenge against Big Bro, who's been beating up on them all year long, is to send BLG home this early in the playoffs.
If you told me, round 2 upper bracket, I could find a way to make it work. I wouldn't think it would be down here hanging out so... No way. Yes, this is the craziness, and got a little bit of an extra slice of craziness. We got a bit of the Diable situation going on in the LPL. Been avoiding a fan meet, which again, this one is even almost more strange. This is a situation of people that have paid an extra amount of money for some sort of VIP section where you are pretty much gonna have that interaction with the players and everything else, and then just no bin showing up and whatever. So we're going to have to see how the fallout, or what fallout there is for that type of situation, and how seriously it is going to be taken. But yeah, all that in the background of what is going to be a killer series within the LPL, and in this lower bracket situation, even more drama dialed up for it.
Yeah, perfect timing for that to come through for Bin, right as you have this high stakes matchup when things are already a little shaky for BLG after dropping that Series 2 World Elite. And I'm immediately zeroing in. I feel like time and time again, the X factor for BLG. You can talk about, Knight is at an absolute elite level. There's drama around Bin. Viper is starting to level up, but they live and die by the individual performance that Jun is having in the jungle. Because when they're elite, you're talking about Jun as a top 3 LPL jungler. And when they are getting upset and losing, you're wondering how this guy is a starting jungler. And I'm a little worried that Junjia and Hongq are fed up with losing and are going to be absolutely locked in for this series against BLG.
This feels like pulling in that used car off of the lot, and you're like, oh man, what is wrong with this? And all of a sudden you start to figure, oh, the radio doesn't quite work the way the seat doesn't really recline the way it's supposed to, the window doesn't go up. These are all problems, and sure, they're things that you'd like to have been fixed or better, whatever. But then you all of a sudden take your mind and go, wait a minute, I don't have any rear wheels on this car. That is a crucial problem. And that's the problem BLG is finding themselves with once again. They have gone through, is it Bin locked in his room? Is it Viper not really being the Viper that we thought we were signing?
Dealing with a wrist injury also, by the way.
Which, again, that comes to news. And then is it Knight simply having to do the hero performances? No. The problem is the same all along. It is looking at that dependency and that fluctuation in consistency and performance that you do get from the jungle position, which has handicapped the entirety of this roster from your superstar players in Knight and Bin to, again, going down to the bottom lane and Viper, trying to establish again and find his footing within the LPL. All of that has been under problem and under siege this year due to the instability in that jungle position. And I think, again, for a series like this is a JDG team, which say all you want, all the criticisms that could be valid about them, they are certainly one of these teams that I would feel threatened about if you are BLG, meeting them in a lower bracket situation.
And of all the squads, you can just sit back and say, well, it's okay, Knight will carry us, he'll 1v9. Hongq has clearly been the second best mid laner to Knight throughout this entire split, so I don't see it happening, and I'm looking at a scary long off season for BLG with an early exit against JDG. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you, absolute gorgeous people. Enjoy the wonderful playoffs over the weekend. We'll be back to recap it all. Catch you on that flippity flip.